On today's episode, we'll be talking about the Flint Water Crisis.
Take a trip with me, baby, let's meander. Going through so many Great Lakes standards. See the sights, highlights of Barry Sanders. Come along with the random Michigander.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Random Michigander. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. I'll be providing a regular dose of Great Lakes state-related topics in podcast form, from history and events to locations, popular culture and sports, as well as food and drinks and basically anything else that might help you learn more about the great U.S. state of Michigan. This podcast is available to listen to on all the major platforms by searching the Random Michigander. Click follow on the main page on your preferred service and turn on notifications to be alerted about all the latest episodes, which I upload on Thursdays at 5 a.m. Eastern. I'm also on social media at _random_Michigander. I have pages on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So today we're diving deep into a story that shook our state to its core, a story of environmental injustice, broken trust, and the incredible resilience of a community. We're of course talking about the Flint Water Crisis. For this episode, we're going to walk through the timeline, the people, and the ongoing echoes of what happened in Flint. It's a complex tale, a heartbreaking one, but also a story of hope and the unwavering spirit of a city that refused to be silenced. So settle in and let's begin. Now, to understand the Flint water crisis, we first need to understand a bit more about the city of Flint itself. For decades, it was a city synonymous with American industry, the birthplace of General Motors, a place where innovation and hard work built a thriving community. But like many industrial cities in the Rust Belt, Flint experienced profound economic decline. Factories closed, jobs disappeared, and the population dwindled. By the early 2010s, Flint was facing severe financial hardship under the oversight of state appointed emergency managers. And this, my friends, is where our story truly begins to turn. In an effort to cut costs, the city of Flint, under the authority of its emergency manager, made a fateful decision. For nearly 50 years, Flint had been receiving its treated water from the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, drawing from the clean waters of Lake Huron. It was reliable, it was safe, but Detroit's water rates were increasing, and Flint was looking for a cheaper alternative. The plan was to eventually connect to a new pipeline, the Carignan Water Authority, which would draw water directly from Lake Huron, much like Detroit does. But that pipeline was not ready. So, as a temporary measure, on April 25th, 2014, the switch was made. Flint would temporarily draw its drinking water from the Flint River. Now, let's be clear, the Flint River isn't exactly pristine, far from it. It had a long industrial history, a reputation for being polluted. Concerns were raised by some within the community, but officials assured everyone that it would be completely fine. They said the water would be treated to make it safe. But here's the crucial, devastating detail there. When the water source was switched, a critical step was missed. The Flint River water is highly corrosive. For decades, the pipes carrying Detroit's water had developed a protective coating inside, preventing lead from leaching into the water. The Flint River water, without proper anti corrosion treatment, a treatment that would have cost a mere $140 a day, began to eat away at that coating. It was like a slow, invisible acid gnawing at the very infrastructure of the city's water system, releasing lead and other contaminants into every tap. So naturally, within weeks, the complaints started pouring in. Residents noticed their water was discolored, often a murky brown or orange color. It smelled strange, sometimes like rotten eggs, and it tasted terrible. People reported skin rashes, hair loss, and other ailments. Imagine turning on your faucet and seeing something that looks like it came from a muddy puddle, not a clean drinking supply. But naturally, time and time again, city and state officials dismissed these concerns. They told residents the water was safe. They said the discoloration was merely an aesthetic problem. They downplayed the health complaints. This was the initial agonizing chapter of the crisis, a community crying out and those in power, it seemed, turning a deaf ear. One of the earliest red flags, which was initially ignored, was from General Motors. They announced that the Flint River water was corroding newly machined engine parts at their plant and switched their supply back to Detroit water. Think about that. If it was too corrosive for engine parts, what was it doing to human bodies? Then, by August of 2014, E. coli and other bacteria were detected in the supply, leading to boil water advisories. For those of you that might not know what that means, it's when the water is not safe to drink directly from the tap, but supposedly, if you boil the water first, it can be used for normal purposes. More chlorine was added to combat the bacteria that they found, but this only exacerbated another problem. It increased levels of disinfection byproducts, including trihalomethanes, which are also known as TTHMs, which are associated with cancer risks and reproductive problems. The situation was spiraling, and the people of Flint were just caught in the middle. The year 2015 was a turning point as the public outcry grew louder and the scientific evidence became impossible to ignore. Despite official reassurances, residents, community activists, and independent researchers began to take matters into their own hands. Leanne Walters, a Flint mother, became a pivotal figure. Her family was experiencing severe health issues, including her son developing lead poisoning. She started collecting water samples, sending them to Virginia Tech professor Mark Edwards, a renowned expert in water quality and corrosion. What he found was simply horrifying. The lead levels in her home water were extraordinarily high. In one sample, nearly 13,000 parts per billion. To give you context, the EPA's action level for lead is 15 parts per billion. Not 15,000, 15. And hers was at 13,000 parts per billion. So this was not just potentially dangerous, it was an extreme hazard. And at around the same time, Dr. Mona Hanna Atisha, a pediatrician at Hurley Medical Center in Flint, began noticing a disturbing trend, an increase in elevated blood lead levels in the children she was treating. She took the brave step of conducting her own study, comparing blood lead levels in children before and after the water switch. Her findings, published in September of 2015, confirmed what many residents feared. Percentage of children with elevated blood lead levels had nearly doubled, in some areas almost tripled. Dr. Hannah Atisha, a compassionate and determined advocate, presented her findings to the public, urging immediate action. Her scientific integrity and moral courage were a beacon in a time of official obfuscation. But even then, initial responses from state officials were dismissive, accusing her of causing near hysteria. The public outcry intensified. Residents, armed with their brown water samples and their sick children, marched, protested, and demanded answers. They brought bottles of discolored water to city meetings, a visceral display of the invisible poison flowing through their homes. Social media played a crucial role, amplifying their voices and sharing the shocking images of the tainted water. It was a grassroots movement fueled by desperation and a profound sense of betrayal. The narrative began to shift from isolated complaints to a systemic failure of government. The world began to take notice. In October of 2015, under immense pressure, the city finally switched its water source back to the Detroit system. But the damage, as we'll soon hear, had already been done. Protective lining in the pipes was gone, and lead continued to leach into the water for months, even years after the switch back. And then we move on to January 16th of 2016. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder declares a state of emergency in Flint, and soon after, President Barack Obama declared a federal state of emergency, paving the way for federal aid. It was a long awaited acknowledgement of the catastrophe, but for the residents of Flint, it was also an agonizingly slow one. The crisis also brought to light a horrifying surge in Legionnaire's disease. Between June of 2014 and November of 2015, Genesee County experienced an outbreak with at least 12 deaths and dozens sickened. Scientists later conclusively linked this outbreak to the switch to the Flint River, specifically due to sharply lowered chlorine levels that allowed the Legionella bacteria to flourish. This was not just a lead crisis, it was a broader public health disaster. Unfortunately, the human cost of the Flint water crisis is immeasurable and continues to unfold. This was initially just about bad water, but it was revealed more as the poisoning of a community through neglect and downplaying, a profound violation of trust, and a stark example of environmental injustice. But the most immediate and widely publicized impact was, of course, lead poisoning. We've talked about Dr. Hannah Atisha's findings. Lead is a potent neurotoxin, especially harmful to developing brains. For children exposed to lead, the consequences can be devastating and lifelong. Impaired cognition, learning disabilities, behavioral problems, reduced IQ, and developmental delays. Imagine the anxiety of parents watching their children struggle, knowing that the very water they gave them might be the cause. But the impact was not limited to children. Adults experienced hair loss, skin rashes, anxiety, depression, and other health issues. There were concerns about reproductive health, with studies suggesting a drop in fertility rates and an increase in fetal deaths in Flint after the water switch. Pregnant women faced an increased risk of hypertension. The trauma of being systematically poisoned by the very utilities meant to protect them left deep psychological scars. Many residents developed PTSD, a profound distrust of authority, and chronic health worries. Beyond the physical and mental health consequences, there was the immense disruption to daily life. For years, residents relied on bottled water for drinking, cooking, and even brushing their teeth. Imagine the logistical nightmare of hauling cases of water, the constant worry, the inability to simply turn on your tap for a drink. Schools and businesses had to adapt, providing bottled water and installing filters in their systems. The sense of normalcy, of basic safety, was shattered. Now, the crisis also disproportionately affected Flint's already vulnerable population. Flint is a predominantly African American city, with a significant portion of its residents living below the poverty line. Critics have rightly pointed to the crisis as a clear cut case of environmental racism, arguing that if Flint had been a wealthier, predominantly white community, the concerns would have been addressed much sooner and with greater urgency. This disparity in protection from environmental hazards is a painful truth that the Flint crisis brought into sharp focus. The economic impact was also severe. Property values plummeted, businesses struggled, and the city's reputation was tarnished. The legal battles that ensued were long and complex, seeking accountability and compensation for the harm inflicted. While a significant settlement was reached, the true cost, both financial and human, can never be fully repaid. For many, the crisis became a daily burden, a constant reminder of the betrayal. It wasn't just about the water pipes, it was about the broken social contract, the erosion of trust in government and public health institutions. And of course, this begs the question, where does Flint stand today? It's been over a decade since that fateful water switch, and the city has been on a long, arduous journey toward recovery. One of the most significant undertakings has been the replacement of lead service lines. This was a monumental task, digging up thousands of pipes connecting homes to the main water lines. The city, with state and federal funding, has worked tirelessly on this. As of recently, over 97% of lead service lines have been replaced. This is a massive milestone and a testament to the persistent efforts to make the water infrastructure safe. In May of 2025, a major announcement brought a sense of cautious relief. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency officially lifted the emergency order placed on the city of Flint under the Safe Drinking Water Act in 2016. This signifies that Flint's water system is now in compliance with federal lead standards. This achievement comes after years of implementing a robust corrosion control plan, consistently testing below federal lead action levels, and upgrading water system operations with more certified water operators and a new backup water line. And I'm sure you're all wondering, is the water safe to drink now? According to the EPA and state authorities, yes. The water in most homes has been consistently testing below federal action levels for lead since mid 2016. The new pipes, combined with the proper corrosion control treatment, are designed to ensure lead doesn't leach into the water. However, as you can probably figure out, trust is not that easily rebuilt. For many Flint residents, the memory of the crisis is still fresh, and the skepticism runs deep. It's understandable. After being told for so long that the water was safe when it clearly wasn't, rebuilding faith in the tap is a slow process. Many still choose to use bottled water or filters as a precaution, a habit born of necessity and fear. Beyond the pipes, there's been significant investment in Flint's recovery. This includes funding for healthcare services, especially for children exposed to lead, educational resources, food programs, and job training. The state has provided hundreds of millions of dollars alongside federal contributions to help the city and its residents heal. And while there's progress on the infrastructure front, the long term health and psychological impacts remain a significant challenge. The effects of lead exposure, particularly in young children, can manifest years down the line. Continuous monitoring, specialized educational support, and accessible healthcare are vital for the well being of the affected population. As we look to the future of Flint, it's a story of both ongoing struggle and burgeoning hope. The physical wounds of the crisis are largely being addressed, but the emotional and community wounds will take generations to fully heal. But there are signs of resilience. Flint recently saw its first population growth in 25 years, a small but significant indicator of a turning tide. There are new economic development efforts underway aimed at revitalizing the city. Mayor Sheldon Neely, a strong voice for Flint, speaks of the city's potential for excellence, emphasizing that we have all the ingredients right here in the city of Flint to be nothing less than excellent. The Flint Water Crisis serves as a stark reminder and a critical lesson for the entire nation, and indeed the world. It highlighted the devastating consequences of neglecting aging infrastructure, of prioritizing cost cutting over public health, and ignoring the voices of marginalized communities. It underscored the importance of transparent governance, scientific integrity, and environmental justice. The crisis has spurred national conversations and policy changes regarding lead pipe replacement and water infrastructure. It has put a spotlight on the often invisible dangers lurking in our drinking water systems. Across the country, communities are reevaluating their own infrastructure, spurred by the tragedy of Flint. And for the residents of Flint, the fight for justice continues. While the water is declared safe now, many are still waiting for compensation from the $600 million settlement, a complex process that will take time to distribute to the tens of thousands of individuals that were affected. Accountability for those responsible for the crisis has been pursued through criminal charges, though the legal processes have been long and often frustrating. But let's be clear, Flint's story is far from over. It's a story of a community that was poisoned by its own government, but also a story of incredible strength, advocacy, and a relentless pursuit of justice. It's a Michigan story deeply rooted in our state's history and a powerful lesson for all of us. And that's all the time we have left on this episode of the Random Michigander. Thank you for joining me on this important journey. As you may have noticed, not every episode will be some upbeat, happy tale, and some of these stories are very important that are not so positive and are something to be learned from. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and keep that Michigan spirit alive. All right, everyone, try and have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
Brandon at Random Reviews Entertainment.